Okay, so we are now live streaming.
All clear.
This
Okay, thank you very much.
So once again, this is our final sales and revenue leaders event of 2020. It's particularly exciting because at the end of this event, we're going to be announcing the top 50 sales leaders to follow in the UK. This is the 4th year's edition of this list. And a lot of effort and work has gone into it behind the scenes to reflect the industry's top leaders to follow. Before that, we've got an event of great content that we've become well known for. And it's important to share that we wouldn't be able to do it without the support of our sponsors. So thank you very much to SalesLoft and Aircall. We've got their leaders here today, Ollie and Andrei, who are going to open up this event and talk about the year, talk about some of the trends they're seeing as European sales leaders. Then we're going to go into the 7-minute talk. So we've got 4 excellent speakers today. We're going to be starting with Nick Shaw, who is the CRO of Brightpearl. Then we've got Natalie Lamb, who's just joined Silverfin, followed by Mike Harris, who's just joined PluralLab, and then we're going to wrap up with Bruce Hunter, who's dialing in from Edinburgh representing UserTesting. As you're aware, we have our 7-minute format. Do engage in the comments and say hi. And then at the end of the 7 minutes, we're going to a panel discussion. And then we'll launch and announce and talk about the top 50 leaders. A couple of other companies to mention that have supported us this year includes Venatrix and G2, also SimilarWeb, SalesWorks, Refract, Air Marketing, Exactly, and also, who else did I say? Cognizant. So this is the opening. Let's get going. So just to begin with, we're going to have a conversation with Ollie, Sharpe, and Andrei, who have been supporting us this year. Ollie, just before we get into this, it'd be nice to just share a few words about what your highlight of the year has been and why you've been supporting sales confidence this year.
Yeah, I'd love to. So as James said, my name's Ollie Sharpe. I'm VP of Revenue at SalesLoft. We opened the office April last year. And one of the decisions we made very early on was to work with James. I've worked with James before at LinkedIn for a few years, but to work with James and sponsor what he was doing. And the reason why we took such an interest in it is because I believe that there was a massive gap in the market for, and not when I say market, it's not just to make revenue, but in the sales industry for something like James is doing. And it was great interest to us because it's not just looking at getting people together, it's actually does have a good cause, which is around we can talk about the mental well-being of salespeople, we can increase the number of females in the industry. So the fact that James is doing something positive for the sales function, I think that's why we made the initial step. Highlights, it's hard because we've not been out of the house for the last however many months. So highlights was like going to sit in the lounge for maybe an hour. But really, when it comes to sales confidence, we had the partner dinner at the beginning of the year. I don't think it's hard to actually say. I mean, the SDR awards was actually a good one for me because we did have 3 people in the top 20, I think, so it's quite a nice thing. But for me, more about sales confidence, what I've got from the last year of it is the connections that we make at these events, whether it's in the bar afterwards or whether it's speaking. People like Enrique at G2, Richard at Refract, Simon at Wellity, which advertising for him, Shabri at SalesWorks. The network we've built and I have built as a sales leader from what James has provided has been brilliant. I think I've seen it this year when we're all working at home, the people you can call on and ask for advice from. So that's been my highlight, having people to ask while I'm stuck at home that James has provided through his network.
Awesome, appreciate it. And Andrei, you're actually dialing in from Paris, and we had a good opportunity at the beginning of the year before this lockdown to spend time together. But what was the reason that Aircall and yourself got behind sales confidence this year?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of similar here to what Ollie said, but I think, and pointing out that I am actually dialing from Paris, one of the observation I actually had at the beginning of the year when decided to support sales confidence was that I was observing maybe for the last 2 years or 3 years that really there was starting to be a shift from a lot of sales best practice, a lot of sales leaders in the US often being highlighted and being seen or being looked at, and that actually a lot of great stuff and a lot of great sales leaders and opinions were actually being heard just from small conversations here in Europe. And I think, and I really believe that within Europe, today the UK has this special position to actually lead the pack, let's say. And I think that within the UK then, the best, well, what I found back in January to be the best community to lead the pack here was Sales Confidence. I really felt like Sales Confidence was actually allowing to bring back all of the best, basically UK and European sales leaders to express what they were working on and actually influence and even start to have much more power over what was happening over the US. Aircall being a company that is sitting across the US and Paris, I even started to see this internally. If maybe, let's say, 3, 4, 5 years ago when we started, you could see this little, well, the team in the US doing their thing and really not looking at what was happening in Europe, and gradually starting to be slightly more humble and being looked at what's actually, how are they doing it in Europe? What are they doing different? And is it actually better than on some aspect than what we're doing? So that I think I really found this both in your vision, James, of the way you're elevating the sales community, in the way we actually see the sales B2B job today in the tech space, not only B2B now actually. And so that was the main reason for joining, I think, and bringing Aircall on board and support this whole community.
Excellent. And, before we invite Nick up, our first speaker, some of these elements, you touched on them, Ollie, from elevating females in the sales profession, and also, I guess, being a promoter of well-being. Is this something that you've had to double down on this year because of the circumstances, or something that you've just become more passionate about, and there's kind of good reason to be supporting some of those key areas?
100%. I mean, I think that it's made us make everybody rethink about our team as individuals, because I think we always think of them in the office, how we sort of entertain them or keep them busy in the office and keep them happy. When they're at home, it's a lot easier for them to find it tough, especially now we're going into winter as well. So we definitely, as soon as this started, really looked at what we can do to impact our team members to make sure that they don't have as tough a time as they could. I mean, one of the things that springs to mind is we started by having a rest day, a day off work, where the company closes down every other Friday. It just meant that people took the time away from the desk. And it's my worry is that people are working till 9 o'clock at night and stuff, and work is too easy to sit at your desk. So we've got to definitely think about that, of how we can make it easier for them to retain a work-life balance, when really there's a blended grey area between work and life now, and work and home.
No, that's great to hear. Is there kind of a final observation from you, Andrei, on this year and how you've adapted yourself as a leader in the business?
No, but I think to your point of showing that it's true, like sales confidence has been strong in actually encouraging women in tech and mental well-being, and more generally speaking, I would call it diversity. And what I think, to come back to my first initial point, Europe actually has an edge on being sensitive to diversity. Europe, by definition, is diverse, whether it be the language, the regions, the culture. Europe is a diverse part of the world. And I think that with diversity comes empathy. And I think that this is, with what's happened with the pandemic and the economic crisis that came with it, actually led to a lot of salespeople to question the way they were maybe doing sales. I mean, we've been talking a lot about consultative selling. We've had a lot of these conversations with Ollie, and it's the way that sales is progressing too. And today, I really believe that, well, here, again, there is an edge, there is a card to play, and Europe is in a strong position to actually position itself even stronger and come out even stronger than what it has started the year.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for the continued support of the community. And this is really what the top 50 sales leaders in the UK is about, is representing those leaders that demonstrate empathy and confidence in what they're doing. As two sponsors, your faces won't appear this year, but I'm grateful for all the support. And once again, thanks for getting involved. So I'm going to invite Nick up to the stage. Take care, guys.
Thank you, James. Thanks all.
Thank you, James. Cheers.
Hi, Nick, you can see us?
Yes, I can, James.
Good. Well, thank you very much for opening this final event of the year. Let me just give everybody an overview of your experience, while you get yourself comfortable and ready to go. So one of the great things about supporting and promoting UK leaders is supporting a UK founded company. So Nick Shaw is the CRO of Brightpearl, and he's responsible for all go-to-market activities, including global sales, customer success, professional services, marketing, and alliances. He's previously been the GM of Semantic and was responsible for a $500 million business unit. And this also took the responsibility for cloud services and their business that they acquired, Message Labs. He's got background in startups and service companies, and I'm super excited. It's taken a while for him to get featured. So Nick, I'm going to leave you for your 7 minutes. Good luck.
Thank you, James. I feel like I'm a bit underdressed compared to you. You're looking very smart and very slick today. But thank you for that. Today, I'm going to give you a quick chat about how to get sales and marketing aligned for 2021. It's a really important thing, and I just want to talk you through. So many times in my past, I've heard these kind of things. Marketing say, we get them all those leads, they don't follow them up. And if sales do close the leads, apparently it didn't come from us, it came from someone else they know. But when they don't win the deals, it's our fault and we waste so much money and we never get any feedback. And then I hear the other side where sales say, marketing never bring us any decent leads. We have to make hundreds of calls to get a decent one and they don't listen to our feedback. And some parts of this probably sound very familiar to you. Generally, quite often sales moan about marketing, marketing moan about this. And I've even had cases where it's so disaligned. And, I can talk about a case in my previous company where marketing were actually told not to help sales in a certain area because they were after digital sales and the sales team were after retail sales when I was looking after the Norton business, which wasn't great, but we managed to solve it. So what can you do? Because this is a familiar thing, and what can you do to sort this out? The first thing you can do is you need to get everybody aligned. And this alignment must happen at the kind of CMO, VP of marketing / VP of sales kind of level. And people must get on the same page. Now, it's obviously pretty easy for me to say this in my current role because I have both sales and marketing under my remit. So it's very easy for me to say this. But actually, I still need to get those teams aligned. So the first thing you need to do is work out a joint strategy. What does sales want from marketing? Do they want leads? Do they want branding? Do they want PR awareness? What does sales actually want marketing to do? And then marketing's got to work out what they want from sales. Do we want leads? Feedback within, a time frame of, 24, 48 hours? Do we want a mechanism on quality? Do we want topics for webinars? Do we want to understand what you need from us? Once you've agreed this, and how you want to agree this, the key thing is how you're going to measure it. And measurement is one of the key things. And what I'm going to do is I want to give you a very quick overview of how we measure one area within Brightpearl, because what you have to do is you have to have proper measurement and it not be subjective. So I'll just talk to you about in Brightpearl how we do our measurement. So in Brightpearl, we measure marketing leads. They come in through HubSpot and then we go into Salesforce. We have kind of 3 different major channels, inbound, outbound, and partner. Probably pretty similar to what most companies have in the cloud base. And we kind of measure it in the following ways. How many marketing qualified leads have we brought in? And we define marketing qualified leads as someone wanting to book a demo, but everybody can define marketing leads in a different way, marketing qualified leads. You just got to work it out. And we monitor that as the first stage. We then monitor how many marketing qualified leads are converted to SQLs and the percentages on a monthly basis. Now, you can see this within Brightpearl at any stage, on a weekly basis, daily basis, but we look at it, we review it on a monthly basis. For outbound, we have a jump in generally at around the SQL level because, you know, they've qualified it and then they go into it. We then look at kind of SQLs to SAOs percentages, and then we also look at SQL to close. Anything that's a kind of marketing lead where they've downloaded a white paper or anything like that, we look at from the overall, we look at that as a nurturing, and that just goes through a nurturing process. We then analyze things like SQL to SAO by rep to iron out individual rep issues and to look at trends, and look at things like if a rep's accepting too many SQLs or SAOs. And we review this with marketing and sales, and we look at it very regularly to make sure we're all on the thing. And we look at it because there's no argument. We have an exact process of how the sales team should accept things, and therefore there's no arguments. And we empower the marketing teams to work regularly with the BDRs. So the marketing function will ring the BDRs, will have meetings with the BDR manager to understand what's going well and what's not going well. And therefore, we do that. BDRs are not a marketing function in Brightpearl. Some companies have it in marketing. We choose not to. We have it in sales. There's pluses and minuses. There's no right answer to that. But the marketing team is continually working with those BDRs, looking for topics that allow us to refine our marketing message and improve our PPC, because it's really important to have that kind of feedback mechanism. And actually, a couple of topics during the pandemic that the BDR suggested us for us to do webinars at, we did some webinars on, and we actually closed 2 deals within 60 days from that. So the feedback mechanism does work. The other thing we do is we understand each other's processes. So I have the leadership teams from both sides understanding each other's processes. So the sales leaders understand the complete marketing process, and the marketing leaders understand the sales process. So the marketing leaders, when they first join us, anybody from marketing, they sit on prospecting calls, they sit on demos, they read through our playbooks, so they understand our playbooks. So therefore, everybody knows from both sides where we sit. It's really important, because then both sides can understand each other's. And we just review it, and we review it. And we don't always get it right, and we make mistakes. We do. Absolutely. You know, and we look at things, and we pivot, because outbound wasn't working during the pandemic, as I'm sure it wasn't for a lot of you. So we pivoted that team to focus on partner and to help us with some of the inbound qualification during the pandemic to make it perfect. So, you know, bearing in mind I haven't got that long, there's kind of 5 things I want to leave you with. Make sure you understand each other's goals and processes. It's really a key thing. Make sure the goals are aligned, which I think is so important. And if they're not, work with the relevant teams, whether it's the CRO, the chief commercial officer, the CEO, the chief marketing officer, whoever it is, to get them aligned. Review the business from each other together on both sides. And if you do that, you will get the ARR stack growing faster. There's 2 other things I think is never blame each other, just collaborate and find ways to improve. And the final thing is it's a team game. Both sides contribute to the success of the organization. And sometimes the sales teams take a little too much of the glory. Let marketing have some of the glory. It's really important from that point of view. Thanks, James.
Hi, thank you, Nick. Interesting to see your points and how you've got marketing involved in understanding the process by getting close to reviewing calls. Good to hear. So thank you, Nick. And we'll invite you back for the panel later on in this event. Natalie, do you want to click the button, and we will launch you onto the screen, and I'll give you an introduction while you're appearing. So Natalie, welcome. Thank you for being here. So this is exciting. Natalie's just joined a new role as the Chief Commercial Officer at Silverfin. And she's going to be talking about how she's actually going back to basics as she rethinks designing growth plans and new playbook for growth at Silverfin in 2021. So she's an executive with international experience and over 20 years of experience in software and general management for companies like Micromuse, IBM, and most recently Acoustic. Over the last 10 years, she's demonstrated a strong background in international growth, driving large business transformation, and also turnaround projects and M&A. I'm really excited. I've actually been trying to get hold of Natalie for a year. So this is an anniversary event, and excited to hear what you've got to say. Thank you, Natalie.
Excellent. Thanks, James. And thank you for the intro. As James points out, the last few years I have moved from a very large corporation such as IBM to then a private equity-backed new venture, which was Acoustic. And then now I'm celebrating my 2 weeks at the fintech startup, which is Silverfin. And in this process, what I thought I'd share with you today is many have actually asked me in the last 2 weeks or even a bit longer, like, why have I made those changes? Why have I moved, to quite a sort of a diverse range of companies and equally, hopefully, opportunities? And so I thought I'd share that for me, it was about the opportunity to be part of something bigger, and not in size of company per se, but actually in an emerging and disruptive technology space. And a little bit about me, which I think equally based on what I've learned from Ollie and from James and equally listening to Nick now, is this is all about sales confidence and building sales confidence in a leadership community, sharing stories, sharing a network of experiences, etc. And so hopefully, some of you may resonate with some of this, and hopefully there'll be some, useful, at least sort of best practices or ideas that you may take forward. I'll also say that Nick and I haven't actually prepared together, so we've all prepared sort of behind the scenes. We didn't get to see each other's speeches or pitches before, and so what you will also find is that James has done a tremendously good job of bringing us all together in a theme, and you may see some consistent messages that come through. So I stumbled into the tech and sales industry in the dot-com boom. So yes, unfortunately, sort of some of the years are for those who've been in the industry but a while, you'll know when that was. And one of the consistent threads across my career has been choosing, or actually more appropriately, roles finding me, which allow me to make an impression on a team or a business by moving it to the next level. So I've never taken an easy job. For example, when in IBM, many of my peers were going for the big, high-profiled roles, I found myself looking for roles that needed the most effort and change, and therefore, in my eyes, would be the most rewarding. The best example was I was asked to take on a leadership role in a declining and highly competitive industry. The competition had 7-figure incentives out in the marketplace to displace us, which meant our competitive opportunity was going to be very, very tough. My initial reaction when I was asked to leave this business was not over my dead body, but I did acquiesce, and it turned out to be a key juncture in my career, as ultimately I believe it has led me to where I am now and all the opportunities I've had. I will also state that it was my worst earning years and my most challenging in terms of climate and culture. But what I learned from it, and when I moved jobs, the team hosted a leave and do for me, and there was a room full of clients, partners, and employees all thanking me for taking them on such an incredible and amazing journey. The SaaS industry, as we know, is thriving. We are all pretty well positioned, or should be very well positioned to do it. And as Nick pointed out, the whole sales and marketing alignment piece is essential to any business to getting it right. And I couldn't agree with you more in terms of, finger pointing and the exercise across getting alignment is absolutely, one of the, I think, the foundational pillars to any business in terms of how you plan. This year has definitely thrown a whole spanner of adaptation and being resilient, and I think all of us would agree to that. And if you looked back at your kind of plans that you had for November of 2019 into 2020, and then again, as you look forward, maybe something to think about is look at what new skills or what new ways in which you've had to work or change in terms of your leadership style, versus obviously just, very focused on obviously the business outcome of what you might have to change. It's certainly a very interesting kind of reflection point, and I think quite useful in terms of how you then plan ahead into the next year. Obviously, for many companies, November is crucial. We're closing up financial year, calendar year, etc. And if anyone's kind of heard of Janus, the Roman god of gates, it's being able to look in both directions at the same time and obviously try and pull together a succinct plan. So similar to Nick, what I'm going to do is kind of focus on 3 themes. There's know your customer, pipeline management, and communication, of which, I'm going back to basics in our business in terms of, whilst it's a fast-growing startup, there's lots of opportunity for us to kind of reinforce and make sure that we have put in place the right baseline of framework and pillars of success for us to kind of move forward. I also am never going to profess to say that I have all the answers, and there isn't actually a silver bullet. If there was, I think we'd all be much richer than where we are now. But I think the key thing is taking those basics and then applying them in a predictable and equally, I think, authentic fashion, because all of us, particularly in the climate we're living in at the moment, it's pretty difficult to, perhaps feel as if we're in a normal environment, and being authentic and making sure we remain authentic in what we do and how we behave and how we act with both our clients and our employees and partners, etc., I think is super important. One thing as you look at your business, and certainly an experience I would share, is also watch out for leadership styles or certainly behaviors in a business that drives a wedge between employees and clients, particularly if when you're preparing for 2021, you're looking at some of your short and medium term goals. Nick points out, it's very, very important to understand what your metrics are and what you're trying to measure. But if you don't get those, if you get those misaligned, then whilst driving and hitting our numbers is what we're all measured on in terms of kind of success, in a SaaS world, this can also have quite devastating consequences in terms of, if you've got that wedge between employees being driven to do a certain thing, it will drive a certain behavior, which ultimately I think impacts things like NPS and client retention, and then ultimately revenue. So I would watch out for sort of behaviors like that, and find ways to make sure that you are identifying and either coaching and or finding ways to kind of move out of those situations. So back to the basics, get to know your customer better. I'm sure all of you are very clear in terms of your strategic intent, in terms of, are you in the land and or expand business, and what specifically are those measures of success at a high level, for your business going forwards, and how tangible are they? Are you measuring them in, whilst you might be looking at ARR, are you looking at how many new logos do you need in a specific industry? Are you looking at the specific retention rate and maybe improving on a number of points? Are you looking at increase in AOV? And again, those are just some examples of suggestions for you to have a think about. But it's important to also understand the difference between, obviously, the market segmentation and the client segmentation around what we need to do in a land and expand environment, which all of you will know very well. In an existing business, I think we need to love our customers even more than we currently are. And that doesn't mean in a really sort of stalky kind of way. What it means is, we need to remind ourselves as to why those clients, bought from us. They got us to the journey that we're in. And equally, how do we make sure that they continue with us as we move forward, across into the next stage of growth. For new prospects, I think one of the big exercises that we are constantly all challenged with is knowing who our market segmentation is. We may have a great proposition in a specific industry. Certainly Silverfin is one of those examples, but it's being very, very clear and precise about, who is the best target to be able to win, to be scalable, and to be predictable. You can often sell anything to anyone if you have the right skills to do so, but ultimately it may not be necessarily the right business model for you going forward. So up-to-date market opportunity and market by either country or region that you're operating in, broken down by client segmentation. Have you tiered your segmentation of clients? Do you have a tier 1 and a tier 4? What's the size of the opportunity in terms of opportunity to gain market share and or wallet share, and then what do you need to do in terms of actually putting your resources and focus your teams around how you achieve that. I think an empathetic approach, particularly through this year, has been, I think one of the overriding lessons learned through how we've had to sort of change the style and the way in which we do business. And I think it's really important that it is about building a longer term impact with a customer and or a prospect. The intention is obviously no one loses clients or you don't have churn. But equally, as you're building relationships with prospects, they may not be a prospect and or turn into a customer right now, but actually there could be an influencer for you on your behalf that you don't even know about. And then equally, they may end up obviously turning into a customer as you move forward. And I think one of the big challenges that we also face at the moment is the amount of digital noise that we all see. It's reaching people in a personal and a meaningful way, and it's creating those connections that obviously you can build up as you go forward. The second key topic is kind of pipeline hygiene and discipline progression, and this is like the yawn, boring part of like a sales leadership job. It's the worst part that salespeople typically kind of don't really focus on. I'd rather go out and selling and do my stuff. I'll do my admin, I'll do my other bits and pieces later, etc. And this goes back to Nick's point, which is if you don't have the right sort of pipeline funnel, you're always going to be catching your tail. And no matter what the targets are, it's a very demotivating exercise if you haven't built the funnel and build the maturity of the funnel and progress the funnel in the right way in a very sort of systematic thing. So Nick's already suggested some of the areas that, and so I won't focus on some of those. But I think if you take it from, you have a good quality pipeline, and an example was, a couple of years ago, we were in a situation where we actually had too much pipeline, we had too much noise. No one was able to actually move any of the business forward in a way that was actually was actually helping us grow our business. So I made quite a sort of an emphatic decision internally to actually kill a lot of our pipeline because it was just noise. And some of the criteria we'd looked at was things like number of stalled deals. So I think it's really important that when you look at your stalled deals and you look at your quality of your pipeline, focus in on areas where you can pull back on quite quickly on how you can move things forward and demonstrate to the team that you're actually sort of making progress. And then finally, there is communication. And I think, as I've just said, communication, be clear and repetitive. I think over communication in a market and a time like we're in is a necessity. Work the problem backwards, build out steps to get there. Keep it simple because it builds confidence and trust, and then build a drumbeat around it. I think be personal. I think one of the comments made by Ollie earlier on was be personal. If you look at, but at the same token, stay within healthy boundaries. This whole idea, I love your idea of the fact that you take every second Friday off. I think I might come up with that idea internally, but you have to have healthy boundaries between work and personal life. I've had 2 significant surgeries in the last 3 years. And my key takeaway from my first surgery, which took 18 months to recover, was I actually had to pace myself in a very different way. And my mental wellness actually had to start with me before I could actually sort of, obviously come back into the business in a way that was going to be meaningful and impactful for everyone else. We have to live it and breathe it, and we have to take it quite seriously ourselves, because we're no good to anyone if that's the case. By doing some of these things, I think you create a culture of integrity with our customers and with your employees, and build a strong team around you. And hopefully, through this year, if you follow some of those basic disciplines, a bit like me, the not over my dead body moment in your life, maybe this year will actually be a year that you look back and you realize actually this one of the toughest environments you've managed to kind of gain some new leadership skills as you move forward. So with that, I'm going to hand back to James. Thanks very much.
Natalie, thank you. You're absolute star. Really appreciate the contribution and look forward to having you back on the panel. Our next speaker is Mike Harris. Mike, are you there? So I'm just going to invite Mike up, and then we're going to transition into his talk. We can see you, Mike. You there? You good?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear. So Mike's going to be talking about key considerations for new markets. Now, actually, there's a similar theme with Bruce as our final speaker. One of the things I've had a lot of feedback from leaders as they're starting to think about 2021 is how to effectively nail new markets, new verticals, new geographies. So Mike is recently, literally just joined a new company, and he's a veteran SaaS revenue leader, spending the last 2 decades building MarTech growth stage businesses in Europe and North America. And his most recent roles were launching 2 US companies, Bluecore and Monetate, here into the UK and Europe. He originally attended Queen's University in Canada, and he moved to London in 2001. So looking forward to hearing your insights. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, James, and hello, everyone. Just to, I guess, set the picture for today, I'd probably call this presentation some tactical tips on launching in new markets. So these aren't big strategies I'm going to talk about. These are just some things that I've learned over the years, having launched 3 US businesses into the UK, a UK business back into the US, and also UK teams into Europe as well. And also in terms of context for my experience, I've typically worked with startup and growth stage companies, so sub 500 employees. Pretty much all of it's been in the MarTech space as well. So just keep that in mind as I'm going through these tips. And lastly, obviously, this is all through the lens of sales. When you're expanding to a new market, there's many other elements to consider. On the marketing side, client success, operations, HR. I could talk for hours on those other topics if you want to contact me separately, but we'll just focus on some of the sales learnings for today. So here we go. First point I want to talk about is just product market fit. It's really important that when you're launching a new market, you don't assume that the product market fit that you have in your home market is going to translate perfectly well into the new market. You need to do some research in advance. You need to speak to some of those companies that you're going to be selling to. A great way to do that is getting some consultants involved beforehand, maybe 6 months to 12 months before you're actually planning to launch, to gather some of that intel so that when you do actually make that investment, you're very clear on how you're going to be positioning your solution and comfortable that that product market fit is there. Next, expand before you land. So I'm a big fan of acquiring a few logos before you actually put boots on the ground. It will just make the acceleration and the ramp up that much easier once you start building the team. You can have, just looking back at both Bluecore and Monetate, we had our East Coast team selling into the UK initially, which isn't ideal, but we were able to win some initial business. We also did a lot of expansion selling from our US clients. So there was plenty of opportunity to go after, to at least get some teams in the UK using our solution that we could then turn into references, which leads me to my next point, which is those early references are absolutely critical. If you're fortunate enough to get referenceable customers in the first 6 months of a new market launch, that's great. I find that they are hard to get, and they do take time because you have to sell, you have to bring on those new customers, you have to get them live, and you need a period where they're essentially happy with what they bought before they're willing to talk about it. I would suggest that going in, you very early target some companies that you might be willing to give your solution away at a heavily discounted rate, or even give it away for free for 12 months in exchange for those references. I've seen many companies do that really successfully. I've done it successfully in the past, but there has to be a very clear agreement within your leadership team that you're going to do that, and that you set that as a very specific goal. Next is just when you're going into a market, play to your strengths. Again, looking at recent experience, I worked for 2 MarTech companies that were very strong in fashion retail and footwear. And so when we launched into the UK, we prioritized a lot of our outreach and a lot of our marketing activity at targeting those companies. And not surprising, those were the initial logos that we actually ended up selling. Next point, think carefully about the role that you want to launch with. So you can launch in a new market very conservatively with a sales rep or multiple sales reps. You can hire a sales leader who is going to need to roll up their sleeves and get very active selling initially before they start building their sales team. Or you can bring in a GM and essentially have that cross-functional leader coming in from day one. There's pros and cons for each of those 3. It often depends on how aggressive and how quickly you want to enter the market, and also what the size of the team is likely to be within that first 6 to 12 months. If there's going to be a lot of hiring initially, it may make more sense to launch immediately with a GM. If it's going to be a more conservative approach, you may want to get salespeople on the ground first. When hiring those salespeople, I'm a big fan of hiring at least 2 in a new market. I've seen a lot of companies just put 1 sales rep in to see how they do and then build off the back of that. The issue with having 1 sales rep is you don't necessarily, you don't know if their success or failure is down to that individual rep or down to this product market fit issue or something else to do with that particular market. So I like to have 2 where you can actually compare them both together and hopefully learn much faster by having 2 versus 1 in market. For those initial hires, I'm a big fan of hiring from the industry and hiring people that have a Rolodex. As the teams get bigger, I don't think you need to do that. I think you want to hire the best possible salespeople with great track records. But initially, if you're trying to launch in a new market and you're hiring people that, in my case, don't know MarTech, haven't sold into retail before, it's just going to really extend your expansion timeline. From a compensation perspective, one of the things that I've had and have put in place for others is a compensation plan in the first 6 months, which is more focused on building the fundamentals. So not so much about bookings, but more about defining your TAM, getting your key hires in place, acquiring the account and contact data, which may not exist initially when you launch, doing a thorough competitive analysis in the market, and then obviously setting up meetings and building pipeline. I think after about 6 months, you definitely want to revert to a plan that is based on bookings. But by focusing on that initially, you're building a foundation, which I think will be very useful. And if you don't do that, there's a risk of those early reps just cutting corners and chasing deals without, as I said, putting that foundation in place. The last thing I'm going to say is just the topic around finding a local advisor. This is something I've done in some cases, and in other cases I haven't, and wish that I had. And this is where you identify somebody who is usually an ex-client side individual, usually fairly senior, who is well connected in the market, that can give you insights in the market, insights into specific companies that you're targeting, can make introductions for you, and can just be a good sounding board as you're getting the business up and running. There's, in my particular market, which is retail and MarTech, there's loads of folks that will do that and can do that. But I think it's a great way to, de-risk, those first few months that are super critical, and making sure that you're off to a successful start. That is pretty much it. I went through that pretty quickly, but I'm pretty sure I'm close to 7 minutes.
You nailed it. That's a good example of some good practice rehearsal, and I appreciate you squeezing this in your first week. What is this? Halfway through the third day?
It's actually my third day. Yeah, halfway through. So yeah, it's not ideally timed, but no, I was very grateful to get the invitation and glad I could take part.
No, I'm glad to have you involved, and we'll get you back on for some questions in a moment. So we're going to walk into our final speaker, which is Bruce Hunter. Now, Bruce, can you hear and see me? Do you want to click the join button just as we go into the introductions? So just as a reminder, after the final panel, we're going to invite and announce the top 50 leaders to follow this year. Bruce, can you hear me?
I think so, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're live.
So
just Bruce is going to be talking about building momentum when scaling in EMEA as the first individual on the ground. Now, interestingly, this is an individual that I've had often when I'm designing these events, I'm asking referrals in the background on a weekly basis. And Bruce is one of those leaders that reputationally comes up time and time again. I mean, he's got 25 years experience building fast growth companies, and mainly US HQ businesses that are landing in EMEA. And his first position was at PTC, which definitely had some of the original kind of originators around medic best practices and processes, and a lot of those leaders have gone on to build amazing businesses in Europe and the rest of the world. So he's led teams at various different companies at exec and board level, and during his time at PTC, the 6 years he spent there, he had a period of 36 consecutive quarters of double growth. And right now he's leading UserTesting that have recently passed the $100 million mark, and looking over the next 3 years to get to $250 million globally. So Bruce, it's a pleasure to have you on board. I'll leave you to wrap things up for us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, James. So great. Thanks very much for the invite, and all the great speakers that were there before me. So thanks very much. So as James said, I'm Bruce. I look after the EMEA business here for UserTesting. So James introduced UserTesting briefly. In terms of a company, and what we do is we really help organizations with a digital engagement with their customers to get a better understanding of how they feel and maybe some of the issues or opportunities that exist with dealing with them. Some of the brands that we deal with locally, anything from Trainline.com, British Telecom, Skyscanner, Burberry, more globally, Adidas, Nike, Fidelity, Capital One, Facebook, eBay, and we deal with Amazon in 21 different divisions. So quite a wide array of big digital businesses. And up until April last year, this business had nobody in Europe. So I came and joined as the setup in Europe. And during the last sort of 18, 20 months, we've managed to scale up fairly quickly. We'll exit the year at something like 13 to 14 million of ARR for the company's overall 100. We've acquired about 250 new customers, and next year we'll double the revenue from 13, 14, double it up, and 100 people that we've now got, and double that up again to 200 people. So we're getting really rapid traction in the business. And I guess what James and I talked about was maybe talk about my approach and my philosophy, to doing this with teams. And I think all the great points that, product market fit and some of the execution and planning are absolutely bang on. But I'm going to take this from a people point of view, because I think when you sit there and you're starting out in Europe and you're trying to get it going, then I think, you're in a fairly lonely place, and it feels like you're maybe on the bottom league of a 4-tier system. You've got no players and you've got some money to invest, and you've somehow got to get outcomes and you've got to get the thing going. So clearly the plan underpins that. And I always start with a vision. So I start with a vision that I want to become a mission. And what I mean by that is really something that can articulate to everybody that you meet about what's going to happen. And the slides I've still got all the way from day one. The one slide always says we're going to build a $30 million business, and we're going to do this by 2022. So Europe will become from very little to $30 million in just over 2.5 years. And the reason that I do that is because everybody that you start to meet, in the WeWork cube with the 2 cups of coffee, and they see that that's the whole EMEA business right there, it starts to give them the possibilities of where this could go. So you start to find out what you might do. What happens when we get to 5 and 10, and how many people might there be at that point? What are the opportunities with the accounts you could work with? So you start focusing them on the positives, but not the real grunt work that's going to be in front of you. And then in sort of articulating that possibility as the vision, I start to look for the right people. So I'm going to slightly maybe disagree here with Mike, I think, but I look for certain types of people. So I've got 4 measuring sticks. The first one of those is character. I'm going to look for people that are tough, resilient, driven, ambitious, that underlying quality that wants something, to happen, to prove a point, to leave a legacy. And then the second thing is looking for intelligence. We're going to come up with stuff that we've just got to figure out and get round. Smart people, people with street smarts, intelligent, emotionally intelligent people, they'll figure those things out. And then the third thing is coachability. We're going to do something different. We're going to be different from what we were in the past. So we need to learn fast. So we need to find people that can learn fast. And the fourth point I actually put is lower compared to Mike is track record. And in track record, I'm not interested in what somebody sold in an adjacent market, because I'm not going to do the same thing, or we're not going to do the same thing. What I'm interested in is what's brought them to this place today. Where are they at in their career? And with the original 6 that we hired to do that, to try and harness, this vision into a mission, those people were all at similar stages in their life and could get along. And what I mean by that as an example is, since they joined, those 6, 4 or 5 of them have bought their first house. So they're at a certain stage in their career. And that allowed us to go into the second part, which is really to get them to gel. So the next thing I did was really put those guys all on a plane, all of us together, 6, and we headed for the States, where the main part of the company was. We spent a couple of weeks going through Atlanta, where the company hub was, and in San Francisco, getting loads of education, loads of network. We got loads of people that can really help me transfer knowledge quickly by getting to know those guys. So that really helped from an enablement point of view. But the second thing was we spent 2 weeks eating, drinking, flying, staying in the same hotel, exercising together, really getting to know each other, and getting to know each other from the point of view of knowing each other's backgrounds, the teams you support, brothers and sisters, cats, dogs, families, all those kind of things. They really became close in that 2 weeks. It really served that purpose. And we also went for a sort of leveler type experience, which I call, we went to a karaoke bar one night, and there was a few, good nights, as you would imagine. And that's where everybody sang, individually and collectively. And it kind of created this environment where everybody can learn It's okay to put something out there, make a mistake, and learn. So the next thing is then trying to get people who are gelling together. How do you get them to feel part of the mission? And we started to get those folks to try and involve them in building the rest of the organization as we start getting momentum. And as we get to Christmas, we're at about 25 people. And by that time, we start handing out personalized gifts. So UserTesting swag. And we put their employee number on the side, on the arm. And we gave them a laptop case with the date they joined and their initials. And what that meant is they went to the shops or to walk the dog or into their customers, they got asked about those things, and they started to talk with pride about we're one of the founding members, you know, one of the startup people in this group, and it really made them feel emotionally part of it. So now we've got the mission, I would say, we've got people embedded in the mission, and we're starting to get lots of traction and things are moving. They're really good, they're really willing to go through all the hard stuff because they feel together. So the next part was really culture, methodology, and mindset. And I think the culture was focusing on a few things: collaboration, working together. We made that a really important part of what we did. Diversity was really important. And also to get better, willing to learn, really making mistakes, move fast, keep trying to go fast, make a mistake, doesn't matter. So we created those things. And we also, lastly, made sure everybody felt a metric around opportunity. So we stated that 25% of everybody in the company would get promoted. So it made them feel like there was opportunities going to come with growth. The next part James alluded to was MEDDIC. The methodology, to me, the sat-nav, the best compass for fast growth is MEDDIC. I learned at PTC, I've used it all the way throughout my career. Many other companies from PTC have used that. Snowflake, Sprinkler, Okta, MongoDB, they all use this sat-nav, and they start to develop fast growth businesses. And that really enables people to take that away with them when they move on to the next adventure, a MEDDIC capability. The last thing I would say is mindset. So with mindset, I think when you're in a fast growth business like we are, then you're going to be going through a set of stairs that feels like it never stops climbing. And that can be really tiring. And I think one of the things folk miss is maybe thinking about the mindset, thinking about how you prepare people for that. And so when I use an analogy here, you know, which is going back a little while, but Roger Bannister was the first man to ever break 4 minutes is a mile. And 46 days after he did it, somebody broke it again. But they said no human could do it. And I think if you prepare mindsets to do that, then you can really approach something in a much healthier, productive way. And today that 4 minute mile stands at 3 minutes 43, and a 16-year-old boy or girl has been able to run under 4 minutes for a mile. So we use a guy called Martin Tucker, who is a friend of Sales Confidence. He's got a business called Generate, and he brings together methodology and growth mindset to make compelling, powerful go-to-market teams. Now, these things all need to be pointed towards, you know, a plan and a structure. But I think when you build a vision to form a mission, you put the people in it, you make them feel part of that mission, and then you give them the tools and the method to go about it. That's where you get the fundamentals from the people to build a compelling, fast growth business. It's really worked for us. We've grown fairly fast and we're continuing to do so. Already this quarter, we are adding about another 40 logos on top of the ones we've already won. And we continue to win all sizes of business. So really working for us. So again, that was just some of my thoughts, shares, setting up a business, and how we've went about it from a people point of view.
Bruce, amazing. Thank you. There'll be a round of applause from all the audience if we could see you all. Thanks for staying with us. To the other speakers, do you just want to press join back again? So Natalie, Nick. Hello. Right, the 7 minutes is over. Thank you. Some comfort and relief. I really appreciate it. You know, particularly for those of you that have just joined new companies. And a question, you know, that definitely is more something that happens behind the scenes are individuals looking at developing their leadership career and where to think of going next. And I just wondered if any of you had any points for your criteria, you know, one or two key criteria that you've used to ensure that you pick, you know, the leadership role that's right for you in the next stage of your growth. Who wants to pick that up first? Mike, you nodded. Oh,
So sorry, just to be clear, what we look for our own.
Yeah, when you're picking a role, you're picking a company. What's your criteria that you're basing the decisions on?
Well, for me, I've done regional roles. The last two major roles that I've had, which have been U.S. companies, and running the full go-to-market for EMEA and APAC. For me, the next move, I wanted to run I wanted to be the global functional leader for the sales organization, and so I was really targeting European companies in my search, and spoke to a number of them. I didn't consider any U.S. companies over the last few weeks and months that I was looking. So for me, that was the criteria. It was a change in the scope of the role that I was looking for. I love startup and growth stage companies. I've never worked for an IBM in my career, or an Oracle or a Salesforce. Who knows? Maybe I'd love it, but I love the fast pace and the thrill of that really high growth early phase, and that was important to me as well.
Thank you, Natalie.
So I think actually some of the things that Bruce said, people for me is a big thing. So I think spoke to a number of different companies. I think you get a sense of culture and their values very quickly. I actually joined IBM through an acquisition, so I kind of came through a culture. When you're in that startup mentality and you build that kind of the values and everything else. So for me, people was a big thing. And then I think the second thing, similar to Mike, when you've had the opportunity to do local roles or regional roles and build on your experience, it is being able to have that global responsibility. In my instance, it was actually to move away from a US company too. It was nice to have a change from not having a US headquartered company, because it has a different dimension. So I think those would be the things, certainly, and something where it is growing fast, and you can immediately see that hopefully you're making an impact on the business. Those are the things for me.
Cool, thank you. Anything to add, chaps, before I ask the next question?
I think I agree with what Natalie and Mike said. I think it's really important. I think culture is probably the most important for me, because if it's not the right culture, then it's never going to work. I think you've got to get excited about the company. So they've got to be doing something. It doesn't have to be the most exciting product, but you've got to get excited about where they're going, what they're doing, or something. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle to engage and stuff like that. And then I think you've got to really like, whether it's the leadership team or the board, whoever you're reporting to or working with on a regular basis, you've got to go, can I work with them? Can I respect them? Can I learn from them? And do I get excited about doing things with them? And I think they're the key things I looked at when considering Brightpearl, because I stepped from a large corporate back into the kind of growth stage company.
Excellent. We've talked all of you were talking about kind of some of your frameworks and basics, going back to basics. A lot of the leaders are coming out to the end of the financial year, closing out a year, thinking about planning for 2021, and I've had to adapt and now reflect on a challenging year for many different reasons. Are there just some top of mind thoughts or direction of travel or basics that you've had to remind your focus again, on people, on pipeline, on customers? Natalie, you were talking about showing love to your customers. So any points on kind of a focus area and those basics that you're looking to focus on again for 2021?
Yeah, I think Bruce made a really good comment about Medic. You need to be following and qualifying deals much more, because there's much more people who are window shopping. Some people have got time at home, so they're not going through it. So you need to be qualifying really hard throughout the process. I think that's a really good thing. It's a great way of qualification, and you should be using it. And making sure we're always looking at honing our playbooks. You don't build your playbooks and then put them in the shelf and never use them. You've got to be adapting them constantly and changing them constantly, because the market changes, and we look at it and work together to change the playbooks, and we consider our competitors. One of our competitors brought out a thing against us. We then refine our playbook. You have to be doing that, and if you're doing that, I think you'll be okay. There's many other things, but I think I really like Bruce's thing on Medic. It's really important, really important.
And just to expand on that, I think it's laying out the priorities for the year with a level of kind of realism, because I think obviously coming into 2020, everyone had ambitions that may not necessarily have been achieved. So I think that mission statement of this is what we're doing, I think often teams get confused by the we're going to change, but you keep on changing things, you keep on moving things around. And the reality is you need to be adaptable to kind of making sure, but you have to stick to your mission. You have to keep communicating. We're doing this to bring back to our mission. You have to keep on bringing it back and reinforcing it as you go through, so that people understand that it's not just chopping and changing and we can do anything. It's about evolving the strategy to meet that mission.
Bruce, have you got something to add?
I think with 2021 in mind, it's probably equally applicable now as you go into 2021. Some of the places that you sell, so in our business model, we've got lots of verticals we can sell into. We've certainly withdrawn a lot from travel, naturally, because you've got to think smart. But there's less obvious ones than that in the COVID sort of period that you're trying to adapt in terms of just where you lean in a little more in terms of places you can help, and also big opportunities of. Some businesses like CPG are really trying to move online, in a big way, because they used to go through distribution. So look for opportunities, and as well as that, look for places maybe where you don't want to go. So one of our travel customers once said, Bruce, I don't think I'm going to be able to buy anything else this year because currently I've got zero revenue in my business. That's a good clue that maybe that's a tough place to get investment. And then the second thing is just thinking about levels. I think as we're selling and engaging, everything's moved. So everything's moved up, or everything's moved more complicated in this period, right? But it's still something we've got to demystify and try and sell into. So it's more complicated and maybe a higher level of control than ever before.
So, Mike, just before you respond, I'm going to ask you all in a moment just to share your parting thought, or inspiration or thinking that you want to share with the audience. Mike, did you have any thoughts on that?
Well, for me, having just joined this company, they are culturally they're an office first business. It's obviously had a big change this year with the pandemic, so it's going to be adjusting to this new world that we're in. The company has a lot of the sales organization has just a ton of really young people in it who are very good, but they were benefiting from being in the office. So for me, it's just going to be thinking about how we can continue to build the culture and build the teams. We'll be doing a lot of hiring over the the coming months, but doing that in a remote way. I mean, I did meet the CEO of this company and a couple other members very briefly for dinner. But other than that, I've met nobody, and I think it's probably similar to a lot of the folks taking new roles with a virtual interview process.
Thank you, Mike. So just before I gather your comment, just for the audience, I'm just going to, after we wrap up this panel, we'll then walk through those top 50 sales leaders to watch for 2020. And this is the fourth year we're doing. And then there is some networking available for I appreciate you fitting us in this afternoon. Just to say an observation, interesting. I mean, we're still, the word actually, and I'm now going to use it, COVID hasn't been used much during today's event, and I'm really grateful for that. We're clearly all living in different times, but I think this is an amazing example of leaders that have kind of adapted and got on and are delivering. And so I think it's really impressive to hear and see, because when I started moving our physical events online at the beginning of the year, there was so much uncertainty and people were trying to come up with ideas of how to adapt, but not really have lived through it. So actually, I just kind of wanted to reflect on that moment, and it's great to see the positive stories, anecdotes, and kind of visions for future growth that you and your businesses have. So final parting thought that you can impart with us, Natalie?
Excellent. I have to go first. I think in a crazy kind of way, I think, still trying to have a bit of fun in all of this craziness, which I know sounds really weird because you're doing it very virtually. And to be honest, I've had enough of Zoom pub quizzes and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's, sort of lightening up a little bit in some of it. And I know we've all got business goals to achieve and all that, but I think it's important because, again, it goes to mental health and our, I think it's trying to actually build that into how how we go forwards is, would be my passing comment.
Excellent. Nick?
I think that the name says it all. I think sales confidence, building the sales team's confidence is the most important thing. Keep building that confidence and they will, as a team, achieve. Build that teamwork between sales and marketing and you'll do well.
Awesome. Mike?
Just following my point earlier, we're heading into a new fiscal year, or a lot of us are anyway, and it's going to be very different from what we've seen in the past. So it's just being open and flexible, and managing what will be still probably a strange environment for the sales organizations. But you got to continue to do your planning. You got to continue to provide great leadership, and who knows, maybe someday things will return to normal, but I doubt it will be anytime soon.
Yeah, let's see. Bruce?
So I still lean back to the people. I think we've got to continue to focus on adding value to them. Our job in part of this is to help them go forward. And if we can look after them and add value to them and keep them pointing forward and not be too distracted by what's going on more than they are, I think that's the biggest and the hardest job from behind the screen. So I think if we can do that and people feel like they've gained something in a month or a quarter that they didn't have before in your team, you can keep moving forward and winning.
Amazing. I really, really appreciate each of you putting time into this. I appreciate you've had packed schedules, and it makes a difference. And there will be a full recording so you can watch back on how you delivered today. Thank you again to our audience. I'm now going to walk through this year's top 50 to watch. You guys can step back behind the scenes, grab a coffee, and those that hang around after the top 50, there will be some networking. The show closes at 4. No champagne, no dancing, no hugging, no kissing. None of that. But hopefully some good times. And thank you for being part of today's event. Right, so I'm now going to step into sharing this year's top 50 to follow. So this list has created a lot of awareness of sales confidence in the sales community in the UK and Europe. It's now in its 4th year, which is amazing. I mean, it's been an incredibly strange, difficult roller coaster year for sales confidence and myself behind the scenes. But I'm proud that we get to kind of feature and get behind yourself as leaders, because ultimately you're driving the digital economy. So this has been going on now for a 4-week window of nominations. We've had hundreds of nominations, and they're typically coming from salespeople in your leadership, in your team. They're coming from investors, they're coming from the founders, they're coming from your peers in the industry. So we're taking and gathering and reviewing all these nominations and comments, simple comments before. Throughout the year, I myself and the team are obviously interacting with hundreds of sales leaders. This year alone, if you include SaaS Growth, our annual conference, which was in July, we have about 150 leaders that speak across our online events and our podcast. To get to that 150, there's hundreds of conversations that take place to ensure that we get the best of the bunch to be featured. We also then look at growth data. Despite the challenges of this year, what's been happening within that organization, and we can reference things like Crunchbase in LinkedIn. Now, naturally, we don't know the behind-the-scenes performance of each of your target, but what this does, our process, and this is the 4th year we've done it, and we're proud of it, just gives us a group of individuals to reflect on. So I'm going to walk through this list now, and if you want to see someone make a comment and share with them on LinkedIn, feel free to take a screenshot. And at 4 o'clock, all the top 50 featured get some information and news. So once again, thank you for the partners, SalesLoft, G2, Benetrix, Aircall, Cognizant, Air Marketing, Refract, SalesWorks, Exactly, and SimilarWeb. Throughout, this wouldn't be possible, and I hope at some point you would have engaged with these organizations, or you will going into the future. So walking it down, we've got the top 50. Adam at Sprinkler, Helen at Salesforce, Bridget at Totem, Annika from KDS, Matt Wise Pendo, Stuart TikTok, Andy Branch, Lucy Open Sensors, Edward Encino, and Clay from Culture Trip. So a round of applause for this year's first entries into the top 50. Gareth at Braze, Alison at Attract, Karen Zendesk, Kevin Sophos, Trish Open Symmetry, Cassie Redgate, Rosie DataSite, Gareth Own Backup, Louisa Railsbank, Tally Sparta System. Something that definitely was an indicator as we were aligning this group of individuals with companies that have major outcomes this year from either an acquisition perspective, a listing perspective. We also looked at on LinkedIn on sales organizations and those individuals that have proven in recent times from anecdotes from the nominations, but also conversations in the market, that these individuals are having an impact on their business. So we've got EMEA Adam, Paddy Salonis, Laura Nudge, John at Cedars, Robert Thunderhead, Lauren from Forecast, Jesper at Opta, Steve at Pluralsight, Penny at iManage, and Andy Champion. So we're into our final 20 now. I wish we could be doing this in person. I wish we could have all the champagne flowing. And, you know, if you don't see yourself on this list, as I said, this is not reflective of all the individuals that are fantastic contributors to their growth of their business. We can only have 50, and through our process, this is the 50 that we've ended on. 20, we've got Jenny that just joined Coursera. Brendan, that spent a number of years building the business at Zora, has joined Miracle. Chris Baker, previously at Box, is now building out the European business for Anaplan. Simon, that went through the acquisition of Qualtrics to SAP, is now taking the GM role at Asana. Dom is driving growth at MongoDB. David at Databricks, Julia from Lumen, Neil Ryland at Peacon, Rob, who's just joined Forecast, Mike, who's been one of our speakers today. Thank you, and thank you for all your contributions. So this is now our final 10 for 2020. These are the 10 individuals that we had numerous amounts of nominations, anecdotal feedback from the industry that they've done a fantastic job, and just individuals that have an essence and represent what we're about at Sales Confidence. So congratulations, Simon at Freshworks, Natalie, one of our speakers from Silverfin, Bethany from Peak, who's got incredible stories of growth to share this year from a northern-based business in Manchester, Thomas Harris, the VP driving the growth of Marsis, who recently announced that they've been acquired by SAP. So there's a great story we want to hear there. Bruce, our wonderful speaker that we've heard on today. Stuart, that's had a fantastic run over the last few years building Slack. Christina from Recorded Future. Nick, who is doing a fantastic job and one of our excellent speakers today at Brightpearl. Pip, who's had an incredible career at Salesforce and was recently headhunted to join and build the Google Cloud business for the UK and Ireland. And then finally, an individual that we had spoke most recently, this year's number one, top 50, number one, 2020 sales leader is Thibaut Serol. And if you haven't seen Thibaut's talk, it was an incredible insight from building a business from the ground up in EMEA, and that's available in the Sales Confidence YouTube channel. So thank you. Look out for all the publicity on LinkedIn. We're now going to go backstage for some networking. Once again, this wouldn't be possible without the help of Venatrix, Aircall, Cognism, Air Marketing, Refract, SalesWorks, exactly at SimilarWeb. So this is the final event for me this year. It's been an absolute pleasure to continue hosting these, and I do want to take a moment just to thank each and every one of you for being part of this. It's been a huge adaptation to move online. I know it's difficult for you to make time away from your busy schedules, and so I appreciate every time that you do. I'm massively grateful for all the speakers and our team behind the scenes that have allowed us to deliver these events. I really do hope in the next 12 to 18 months, at some point there is a return to in-person gatherings, and I think there'll be a positive response to that. For the meantime, I want to continue elevating the sales profession, and I'm looking at ways to be more helpful for sales leaders, and being a connector to services, mentors, contacts, or people that you need. And I'll try and do the best I can going forward. If you've got any ideas for me, send a message on LinkedIn. For now, this is a wrap. This is our final Sales Confidence Sales Leaders event of 2020. My name's James Ski. It's been a pleasure to host today's event. Thank you to all our wonderful speakers, Ollie and Andrei, for opening this up, Nick, Mike, Natalie and Bruce, and all of those that participate in supporting and driving change in our business and our economy. Take care, everybody. I'll be in the networking for the next 15 minutes or so, and I hope to catch a few of you. It's actually a great feature. Just head to the networking there on the right. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Good day.